We've accepted in full the recommendations of independent bodies who make the recommendations to the government about pay settlements in the public sector.
We have an independent process, that independent pay review body.
If you look at what the pay review bodies for the NHS recommended, we've accepted that recommendation.
We have accepted all of the pay recommendations.
Well, on that, listen to the Shadow Justice Secretary, Steve Reed.
I want to make a comment about the Independent Pay Review Body because it's not independent. Well, what happened with that body is the government told them the amount of money that they could offer to the nurses, and so they capped the possible pay rise that was on offer. That's not independent. That's the government operating behind closed doors.
In fact, it's just a government mechanism that's been used to replace collective bargaining for certain groups of employees in the public sector. The government handpicks the members and sets the remit. In this case, a crappy real terms pay cut for nurses, which, surprise, surprise, the government is happy to accept.
The fact is the pay offer that is on the table means that anyone who works as a nurse in the NHS will be worse off if they accept that.
Remember, the recommendation of the pay review body isn't legally binding. It's not cast in stone and the government doesn't have to accept it. Here is the government's own health minister, Maria Caulfield, admitting it.
You know, we could have ignored the pay review body's recommendation. So the pay review body, you're right, we don't have to stick to the recommendation.
If it wanted to, the government could just ignore the recommendation of a crappy real terms pay cut for nurses and sit down with the RCN to negotiate a fair deal on pay, but steadfastly refuses to do so.
Can you accept it's a political choice? Because in some cases, your government has ignored the pay review bodies making the independent recommendations. In this case, when it comes to the nurses, you are determined to stick to it.
In fact, the government has ignored the recommendations of the pay review bodies many times in the past.
So if you've already ignored them 4 times this year, why can't you ignore them on the nurses' strike? Why was it okay then to ignore those recommendations when it came to prison service pay or senior civil servant pay or judges' pay?
And let's not forget, the RCN offered to suspend strike action if the Health Secretary would agree to sit down with them and negotiate properly on pay.
If Steve Barclay had sat down this week with the nurses and discussed pay, not the other things, but discussed pay, the strikes would have not gone ahead today.